Is your child's behavior out of control? Well, their nervous system could be in charge. Let's decode that. Hi, I'm Dr. Roseann, and we're talking all about the nervous system. Understanding what happens to the nervous system when you have a dysregulated child, whether they're understimulated or overstimulated, helps you to reframe what is really going on with your kids. It may be a clinical issue, it may not be. But when we better understand what happens to the nervous system under real or perceived stress, you can be better equipped at supporting your child because in today's world, we all need support. 40% of parents are so overwhelmed, they're shut down. 48% of parents really feel like they're struggling. And many parents are worried about their child's mental health as they should be. So let's dive into what is nervous system dysregulation. So nervous system dysregulation can occur for a variety of reasons, but essentially it's when the nervous system either moves into an understimulated state or an overstimulated state. And understimulation can be shown as signs of sluggish processing. Kids may be saying huh and what all the time. They may not be hearing you when you call their name 5 times. Low motivation and overstimulation can be irritation, anger, meltdowns, explosions, big emotional reactions. I think we all see this a lot more with kids of all ages, right? Even young adults, I call them kids. So, what is in control of that? And that is actually our nervous system. And as I said, there's many reasons why our nervous systems get dysregulated, and we're going to talk more about that. But our autonomic nervous system is in charge of the brain's stress response. And it takes threats, whether real or imagined, and it goes into action. So when we are relaxed, we are in a parasympathetic state. I call it the hot tub state. It's often referred to as rest and digest because those things occur very well when you're in a regulated parasympathetic state. When you get activated, your body feels that real or imagined stressor, it moves into a sympathetic dominant state. You will hear words like fight, flight, or freeze. We're also adding fawn in there. And basically, your nervous system gets activated to this level that it has a perceived threat. Now, these threats don't have to be real. But when we have these compounded stressors, right, what are some of the reasons why kids move into a dysregulated state? And this is the same for adults. But, I'm here teaching you parents about the nervous system so that we can better support kids. We can move away from the idea that everything is a clinical diagnosis and requires medication. And we can start thinking about what are ways that we can support our child and how about our family's nervous system, as I like to say, the family ecosystem. So, what are these signs, right? So, of a dysregulated nervous system. I talked a little bit about some of those understimulated and overstimulated signs, but essentially, if you have concerns that, oh my gosh, maybe my child has ADHD, what are those symptoms, right? Those are difficulties with focus, problems completing and starting a task, or maybe you think that, wow, they're just struggling socially. Could they have nonverbal LD or autism? And it doesn't mean that they don't have a clinical issue, but we have to start looking at the different behaviors that result because each behavior is actually mapped to a specific part of the brain. And when we start reframing and thinking, wow, this could be really just a dysregulation of the nervous system that is affecting the brain, we start thinking again more globally. What can we do to help regulate that nervous system so symptoms can go down, right? Great example of that was working with a really impulsive kid, and the siblings came to me, and he was really little, and the mom's like, I'm not really sure if we're gonna, do neurofeedback. And I was like, okay, here's where you're gonna start. You're gonna start with diet and nutrition, but also why don't you start him on magnesium? And, she was, called me within a very short amount of time and was like, holy cow. I think he was really nutrient deficient in that magnesium, but what we realized is that he was really stressed, right? He actually had a learning problem, and they were really starting to think he had ADD, and in fact, he had a learning disability, and the stress was causing him to be very hyper, very impulsive, showing some of those overactive behaviors, right? And once that regulated, she really got to see what the challenges were in the learning because they were being masked by those hyper behaviors and got him proper help. And he, of course, was much more able to focus. And there was such a difference in him. So, really huge deal, right? And so, when we have nervous system dysregulation, there obviously can be a huge impact on daily life, right? So, you're learning in every single area: social, emotional, academic, common sense learning can be impacted because the nervous system, if it's in an understimulated state and you're not engaging quickly, or you are in an overstimulated state and you're super activated, these are states that the body is at a minimum not in an optimal learning situation, in some cases can't learn at all, right? I always like to say, think about yourself, right? If you are super activated and somebody's just trying to talk like regular kind of stuff, you're like, what? You can't even process what you're saying. You might find yourself rereading things over and over. And again, you see how easily, if our nervous system is activated, right? Whether that's from real or imagined stressors, sensory processing issues, dietary components, right? You've got a restricted eater, they're not getting the right nutrients. These are all things that can cause that nervous system to dysregulate. How about a dysregulated parent? Dysregulated parents can cause their kids to be dysregulated too. And I of course, don't say that to shame or blame you. It's an aha moment, right? Because all of these things we know, we're logical. We got it together. We have more patience for our kids, which is huge, right? When we have more patience, we can help them learn and process through things. But kids are not as capable when their nervous system is dysregulated for all of these reasons, plus many, many more, right? Trauma, bullying, learning problems. There's so many reasons why a nervous system can dysregulate. And the more you regulate, the more they can be are able to deal with those things that are dysregulation causing items, but also they might have more conscious awareness of them. Because once we move into a dysregulated state, we become more disconnected, right? You can't really say to a kid, what's going on, right? So, what can parents do? Because clearly there's an impact on their daily life, their learning, their socialization. What can parents do? So, developed my COMS 5-step parenting protocol to really simplify, right? So the first thing that we can do, right, is that we have to co-regulate first. That's the C in COMS. And this, I think, is the hardest thing. I actually don't think this is totally easy because we don't want to slow down enough to support. We think that we have to do more to support our kids. And instead, we don't realize that when we slow down, we take care of our own nervous system. We do have that more patience. We have the more grace for ourselves, grace for our kids. And, our kids need to see other people regulating. So we can't, say, don't yell when we're yelling, as I always say. We have to demonstrate the behaviors that we want from our kids too. And it's really hard to do that unless you're regulating. And sometimes, I mean, it's very tricky as a mother of kids who, have an understimulated and overstimulated kid. It's really hard to hold it together. So you have to be 80% great. Okay. So that gives you some wiggle room. Nobody's looking for perfection. Get off of that idea. That's a terrible thing. So, A in comms is avoid personalizing. Don't personalize their behavior. And the L is look for root causes because you got to really look for those root causes. And when you do that and you're more scientific about it, you don't personalize the behavior. Oh, he's doing this to me on purpose. You know, um, at home, John Carl just got busted, with his computer when he wasn't supposed to have it during the week. And we finally were like, what do you think? What do you think you should have as a punishment? And he was like, I think I should have a month, no computer. I was like, oh, I agree with you. I think that's a great idea. So, he just tried to scam his papa and he was, under his breath, irritated with me. And that's normal behavior. And I was like, honey, mom and dad love you. You got to earn back your trust, you know? And of course, I wanted to be like yelling at him, like 80s style with my mother with a wooden spoon who never ever caught us, but pulled it out just to scare us. That's not going to get us anywhere, right? Logical consequences, being calmer, and it's a great story for the show too. I'm like, bring it on, JC. M is about modeling the coping skills, right? So modeling the how to manage stress is really critical because we often think, oh, our kids have all these things and they're in a nice school and all of the, and they don't really have stress, but that's just not true. Stress can be there for so many reasons: sensory processing, difficulty learning, being around annoying kids, social difficulties in high school. These are all things that sort of just build and build and build, and it's tough to navigate. And kids don't have a break. Even just being on devices too much is a stressor. Right. I find myself putting my do not disturb on as much as I can on my phone because it's so easy to get lost in it, and then it just disrupts your nervous system, us and them, right? And then the last S is supporting and reinforcement, right? We want to reinforce the behaviors. It's about teaching. And when we do the other things, when we don't personalize, we got our stuff together, we're co-regulating, we can be there in the best versions of ourselves to have that patience to reinforce, 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 and reinforce some more. It is really critical that we really try to figure out where the breakdown is and why our kids are dysregulating. And often it's a combination of things. That's another thing that's hard for people. It can be that there are nutrient deficiencies because your kid's a picky eater, they have sensory difficulties. You're in the middle of a divorce, all these other things. And then on top of it, they lack skills. So don't look for the magic wand because I'm going to say you are the magic wand. And I think you're hearing really clearly that self regulation is important of you in demonstrating that. And that's how we get self regulated kids. So we're going to continue our conversation and we're going to talk more about what is an over and understimulated nervous system so that it's clearer for you and you can start reframing how you're thinking about your kids' behavior, but also so that you know how to manage it.